but might be one of the strangest stories in my 14 years of playing and being around it for another 15 years that I've ever heard in all my life.
Again, it's timing is everything. The timing on this one obviously is it's a head scratcher.
We think because we're sitting on our couch like, man, these guys got a glamorous job. Man, there's some ugly parts to football. And
Like, I would literally want to fight this guy. Earlier, we depend on each other to make money, to feed our families and all these type of things, and then you walk out?
So you can go on Instagram and explain it publicly, but you don't take the time to explain it with the teammates that these are your compatriots. You know what I'm saying?
On September 16th, 2018, the Buffalo Bills were getting absolutely crushed. Down 28-6 to the Los Angeles Chargers in a Week 2 matchup, the mood in the stadium was admittedly not great. But for cornerback Vontae Davis, a 10-year NFL veteran and 2-time Pro Bowler, the score didn't matter. At halftime, when he and his team walked off the field, he was doing so for the final time and nobody knew it. He found his coach and said 2 words to him: "I'm done." And he didn't just mean for the day, he meant forever. Chaos erupted when people started to take notice, and his teammates were furious. The media even called him a quitter for it. But the real story is way more complicated than what it seems. I mean, what pushes a player to walk away from millions of dollars and a lifelong dream at halftime? Let's set the stage here. The second half starts, and the Buffalo Bills come out of the locker room, but they're short a player, and nobody on the sideline seems to know where Vontae Davis is. So as the third quarter kicks off, the truth slowly trickles out, first among the players on the sideline, then the coaches, and finally the broadcasters and the media and the fans. Vontae Davis hadn't just left the game, he had literally retired from football. The reaction to this was immediate and brutal. His teammates, who were still in the thick of a losing battle, felt betrayed. Linebacker Lorenzo Alexander, who was a respected team captain, did not pull any punches. He called the move completely disrespectful, saying that he had never seen anything like it in Pop Warner, high school, college, or the pros. To him and to many others, both on and off the team, Davis broke a sacred NFL code. You never quit on your brothers and you finish what you start. The whole situation, though, was bizarre. Their baffled head coach, Sean McDermott, told the press after the game he pulled himself out. He told us he was done. And across the league, this story just blew up. Analysts and former players were split down the middle. Some, like Shannon Sharp, were outraged, questioning Davis's character, and others scrambled for a reason that he made this decision in the first place, guessing that it had to be like a secret injury or some kind of mental breakdown. But regardless, the narrative was already set. Vontae Davis was a quitter who walked out on his team, and that label, it stuck. It was a single moment that threatened to define his entire NFL career. But to get why a man would do this, you have to understand the man himself. How did it possibly come to this? Who was Vontae Davis? Well, before he became the guy who retired at halftime, he was one of the most talented cornerbacks in the NFL. This wasn't some rookie who just couldn't handle the heat. This was a seasoned, battle-tested professional. The younger brother of superstar tight end Vernon Davis, Vontae was a football prodigy when he was younger. He was a first-round draft pick by the Miami Dolphins in 2009, and made an immediate splash, leading the team in interceptions as a rookie. After 3 seasons, he was traded to the Indianapolis Colts, a move that was famously captured on the hit television series Hard Knocks. But it was in Indianapolis where Davis really hit his stride. He cemented his reputation as a true lockdown corner, the kind of player who could shut down the league's best receivers. He was rewarded with a massive 4-year, $36 million contract, and made back-to-back Pro Bowls in 2014 and 2015. And as a side note, a 4-year, $36 million contract was tremendous back then. Nowadays, not so much. But back then, that was a lot and a lot of money. For anyone who isn't in the NFL, that is still a lot of money. But I digress. For a good chunk of a decade, Vontae Davis was an elite cornerback. He was tough, talented, and dedicated, the polar opposite of the quitter label that was thrown at him. His whole career was essentially a story of drive, overcoming a difficult childhood to reach the pinnacle of his profession. He had played through countless injuries, surgeries, and the non-stop beating that a decade in the NFL dishes out. And that is what makes his decision so mind-boggling. It wasn't the act of a man who couldn't take the heat. It was the act of a man who had been in the fire for 10 years and suddenly decided that he couldn't take another burn, even if it was small. The road to that halftime in Buffalo really started a year earlier for Vontae. During the 2017 season with the Colts, Davis's body began to betray him. He had a nasty groin injury that sidelined him and eventually required surgery. The relentless wear and tear of a long career was finally catching up to him, and for the first time, he was dealing with an injury that wouldn't just go away with rest. It lingered and it affected his game. His time in Indianapolis eventually ended on a sour note, with disagreements over how his injury was being handled, and he was ultimately released in November of 2017. In the offseason, of course, he remained a free agent, and despite the injury, his reputation still carried weight. So he signed a one-year, $5 million prove-it deal with the Buffalo Bills. This was his shot to show everyone he still had it. But the situation in Buffalo, far from ideal was putting it mildly. The team was rebuilding and struggling badly. They had just been humiliated in a 47-3 loss in Week 1, and Week 2 was not starting any better. For Davis, who was used to playing for a playoff contender in Indianapolis, this was a harsh new reality for him. So you have a guy coming off of a major injury on a new and losing team who physically just isn't the same player he used to be. The game he had loved his whole life was starting to feel more like a painful grind day by day. And that was the state of Vontae Davis's world as he stepped onto the field against the Chargers. He was a man at a crossroads, and his breaking point was coming faster than anybody, and even himself, knew. With about 47 seconds left in the first half, the Bills scored a touchdown, cutting the Chargers' lead to 28-6. And as Vontae Davis stood on the sideline, something inside of him snapped. He later called it a spiritual moment and an out-of-body experience. A voice in his head clearly told him, "I've given all I've got. It's time to leave this chapter behind." And in that instant, the game, the score, the noise from the crowd, it all just melted away. He said, "I didn't feel right. I didn't feel like myself." And he knew with total clarity that he shouldn't be out there anymore. So he walked over to a coach and told them, "I'm done." He went to the locker room, he took off his jersey, and he texted his wife, "Babe, I'm done. I'm retiring." Then he just walked out of the stadium. And to the world, it was selfish. But to Vontae Davis, it was more like self-preservation. He released a statement later that day trying to explain his motives, saying, "It's more important for me and my family to walk away healthy than to willfully embrace the warrior mentality and limp away too late." And honestly, that's something that many people can get behind. He talked about how leaving was therapeutic for him, and a final break from the gladiator mentality that demands players sacrifice their bodies. It wasn't about quitting on his teammates, it was more about being honest with himself. He knew he couldn't play at the high level he demanded of himself anymore. Not physically, and definitely not mentally. So while the world was screaming quitter, Vontae Davis was at home, finally feeling free. The NFL is built on sacrificing your body for the logo on your helmet, and Vontae Davis flipped the script and sacrificed the team for his own body and mind. It's a decision that still sparks debate. But what do you think? Was it the ultimate act of self-care, or is it just a betrayal of his team no matter which way you slice it? Let us know in the comments below. In the years after, the conversation around Vontae Davis started to change. The shock of the moment never really went away, but a deeper understanding began to creep in because we started to see it with other players as well. His decision forced a long overdue debate in the sports world, one that questioned the very foundation of football's warrior code, that unwritten rule that you sacrifice everything for the love of the game. And Davis made everyone, players, fans, the media, ask a tough question: where is the line between dedication and self-destruction? For some, his halftime walk-off became a symbol of courage, a stand for personal well-being in a profession famous for chewing up its athletes. He decided that he was done with football, and it wasn't the other way around. He took control, leaving the game before the game could take any more away from him. And after retiring, he focused on his next chapter, launching a holistic wellness spa and building a life beyond the gridiron. The story of Vontae Davis is one of the strangest in NFL history, honestly. It's a story about a man who, in one wild moment, chose himself over the game. He just did so at a poor time. He chose his long-term health over another half of football, and he chose his peace of mind over his next paycheck. Tragically, though, this story did take a heartbreaking turn on April 1st, 2024, when Vontae Davis was found to have passed away at just 35 years old. His official cause of death was ruled as undetermined, though there was methamphetamines and amphetamines in his system at the time, cast his 2018 decision in a new, more poignant light. It was a harsh reminder of the hidden pressures and silent battles that athletes endure long after the crowd stops cheering for them, and long after they take the pads off. After his death, his former teammates, many of whom had been so critical in the moment, mourned him as a brother. They remembered him as an upbeat, energetic, and beloved teammate. The man who was once called a quitter was now remembered for the courage that it took to walk away. His final act in the NFL may not have been one of disrespect, at least not intentionally, but a desperate, honest, and ultimately human decision in a world that often demands its heroes to be something more than they are. But again, let me know down below in the comments what you feel about this whole thing. I personally think he shouldn't have retired in the middle of the game, but then again, he just felt like there was no other option for him at that time, and that he wasn't helping his team like he should have been. So he wanted someone else to take his spot, and I actually understand that, now that we've seen it from other players as well. It feels like a cut and dry situation where it's like, oh, it's just wrong for him to do that, and that's the end of it. And while I can get that side, I also understand the toll that it takes both mentally and physically on a player, especially when, you know, you're going through a really tough injury on a new team in a new city, and you're just getting beaten down back-to-back weeks. I mean, I understand it. It's tough. It must be tough for those players to go through those motions without doing what he did. But with that being said, that does it for this video on Vontae Davis. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button because it helps this channel out a ton. And I will hopefully see all of you in the next video.